Ladies and gentlemen, everyone around and in between, this is DebateSensei Professional Edition. This is our new series, season 1 of our new series, where we are going to discuss all things relevant to speech and debate competition, but at the professional level. In other words, after you have done all of your eligibility for college, what can you do? This includes competing in tournaments, but also being the one who is a coach or a director of programs that helps others to compete in speech and debate as well. And so I have with me Dr. Iain Lampert from Modern Brain, as well as other things to talk about this as well. Thank you very much, Iain, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So let's start with a little bit of background. Like, how did you find yourself competing in speech in debate even after you've done the eligibility? So what was your eligibility like?
I competed at the state level when I was in high school. Grew up in California. I went after the state championship in impromptu speaking because I thought it was a lot of fun. I had friends who did it, and I was a big fan of Whose Line Is It Anyway back in the day. It was the closest thing I could get to being a Colin Mockery or Ryan Stiles. Wayne Brady and I think, are a little farther apart. During college, I did mock trial. Collegiate mock trial at UCLA was a lot of fun. It was not forensics. The closest thing I had to doing forensics in college was UCLA went to one BP tournament a year. But we weren't trained in a specialized manner for it. I think now the program's a bit more robust over there. But it wasn't as if I went through the full AFA and NFA circuit when I was in college.
Right. BP, British Parliamentary Debate. I love that. It's such a unique way of doing things. Because I'm used to the single judge in the back of the room. You got a couple of teams and duking it out. But like the delivery there has always been the thing that really sets that one apart. All right, so then you've done that, you've graduated, and now you can do anything you want. What drew you to continue competing?
For a couple of years, I'm developing a team at a local high school, and then I'm hired to expand that to other high schools and middle schools. This is all in Southern California, and we do well, and we start winning championships at NSDA. And throughout all of this, I feel like I'm missing a connection to a deeper level of forensics because I never had the collegiate speech experience and barely had the collegiate debate experience. Right. I've got the opportunity to judge some tournaments at locals like the Cal State Northridge competition. And after a single prelim, I'm thinking these are great scripts. These are really interesting topics. I think that the local high school circuit can benefit from some of the more interesting structures and nuanced topic selection. But even then, I'm not competing in it because this time I'm a full-time teacher, getting my master's and then my doctorate. And when the pandemic hits, then I realize life is going to be different. I don't know which way it's going to go. But given that we have a generation-defining disease that's now spreading, I probably shouldn't wait to do something that I want to do. And I look up what opportunities are there for adults to compete. And I find one opportunity, and that's the International Public Debate Association.
Okay. So International Public Debate Association, that is offered as a college event, at least what I'm familiar with. I'm not sure if it's at other levels as well, but it has a professional division. Right?
Exactly that. So people might be familiar with IPDA at the college level. My understanding is it's one of the more popular events at the community college and four-year college levels because it's accessible. The debate time is shorter than some of the other ones. The qualifications to be a judge are essentially you have a pulse and you're willing to listen. So you're not talking towards experts and just talking towards the common person. All that make it very popular. But even though it's considered a category throughout most of the country, there's a Southern-based league called the IPDA. And in that league, they go out of their way to offer a professional division. And that division is open to anybody. You could be an undergrad and compete in it. You could have a lot of experience in debate and compete in it. You could be a debate coach. You could be a lawyer, a business person. It doesn't matter. You can just come in and compete. Okay, so are these divisions taking place during or at college tournaments? Yes. Okay. So at a college competition, you might find that there's different patterns. In speech, a lot of people are familiar with them already. The way they do it here is they'll have the professional and novice patterns run at the same time.
Okay.
And then they'll have junior varsity and varsity run at a different time. And this way, they're able to get a very interesting blend of people, because you might just have folks from the local college or family members who are judging the preliminary rounds, but the elimination rounds are going to be competitors who were eliminated in other divisions.
Mm-hmm. So what were you still living in California at this time? I guess what I'm asking is, were these tournaments online, or were you doing any face-to-face?
They were online for the entirety of that first year. And I could only do 2 tournaments because they were happening Friday through Sunday. And then as I found my footing in terms of work during that first pandemic year, the Fridays ended up getting taken up. And so I can't do both these at the same time, but I wish I could have gotten more cracks at it. And so some years passed before I could do IPDA in person, but that's jumping ahead, I think.
Okay. So what were the entries like? Like how many people could you count on to be in the professional division at these first, the pandemic tournaments?
Anywhere from 10 to 30.
Okay. And so normally in a college entry, you're entering the school that you're with and then your individual name. Is there some sort of organization that you have to join up with, or are you just joining up as an individual?
You could be an independent. I remember that when I competed in 2020, I entered under the Mountain Pass because that was the name of the Discord that I was in. That was very D&D vibes. And so 2 tournaments as an independent from the Mountain Pass.
The Mountain Pass. And you say you were the sole competitor from the Mountain Pass.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are there other organizations or groups in the professional level that might have multiple people? Do like people form their own teams?
You can. You're allowed to. I think that there's some restrictions in the league on what can win the year-long sweepstakes. I think you might have to be part of an accredited institution for the year-long sweepstakes on the team level. But if I were to say, let's get you and me and 8 other people, and we're all going to be part of the Mountain Pass in the coming year, then even if we were not eligible to get a team level award, we all could get individual level awards, not just at the tournaments, but also at the end of season where they award the top 10 overall debaters and speakers.
Okay. Now, IPDA, they have a national tournament. I don't know how often they've had it. They have a professional division at the national tournament as well?
Really? Yes, and they've had it for decades.
They've had it for decades. My goodness. Okay. Is there anybody that is just like a perennial favorite? Is there somebody who's been doing it for decades, or do you think there's a higher turnover rate?
There are people who do it for a while, then jump back into it. So during that pandemic year where I competed in 2 contests, I recognized people from recordings taken years prior. We're talking about 10 years before. And I doubt they've been competing at every single tournament, like 8 per season for those 10 years. They probably jump in every now and then. Or if they've decided this is the year I want to go for the season-long top speaker award or the top debater award, then that means they're attending at least 6 tournaments that year because they take your best 6 for that ranking.
Okay. So IPDA. Now, are you still competing in IPDA this season?
So not right now. I might do it in the second half of the season. And that's because last year, from the 23 to 24 season, I set the goal of I want to come back and I want to set a record for best overall at the end of the season awards. And I got that record for best debater in the IPDA.
Nice. Congratulations.
Was top speaker. And so I got what I wanted there. I think that if I were to do it again, I would just go to the national tournament and maybe do 1 warm-up before I got there.
Got it. Okay. So is there anybody else that you say that is at that same sort of approach that you're taking? Let's put it that way, that I don't know, how common is that, or is it more likely that people have a different sort of take on it?
I think it's more likely to do it the way that I might do it, as opposed to the way that I did it in the last season. That is, they're going to do 1 warm-up tournament, then go back to nationals. But especially if they're involved with that league throughout the season, maybe if they're affiliated with the school, for example, a grad school coach, chances are they're going to be at the tournament anyway. And there's a divide within that community about, is it best for you to be an active debater, which means you might be learning more, or is it best for you to just be there as support staff for the students who you're with? And
Okay.
there's reasonable arguments both ways.
Okay. So it sounds like the graduate student participating in a tournament, I don't know, I'm just guessing that might be the most likely entries that we see at these professional levels. Am I wrong about that?
You're right.
Okay. Okay. So, but let's talk about the people who aren't grad students, like maybe some of the outliers and exceptions. Well, do you have any examples of people who aren't grad students? What type of person is attracted to debate tournaments?
People who had a history in debate. For example,
Okay.
there's a perennial competitor named Lindsay. She's phenomenal. She
Mm,
was top speaker at the IPDA professional national tournament, I
mm,
think consecutively, back to back.
nice.
She's a instructor, but she doesn't have her own debate squad. She just happens to be a professor.
Oh,
And she either has a PhD or she's a PhD candidate, but she's involved in academia. And when I
nice.
was online back in 2020, there were some lawyers who joined, and they had
Oh,
nothing to do with debate, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago, they were on some kind of team or they were a coach.
okay. That's what I was wondering, if there was a bunch of lawyers on there, but just a handful, sounds like.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we've been talking a lot about debate as an event to compete in, but that's not the only event that adults can compete in, right?
No, there's also speech, and I think the best opportunity for public speaking at the pro level, outside of Toastmasters, which I think people are largely familiar with. I wouldn't call it forensics. I think it's forensics
Right.
adjacent. That's the Pro SDA, the Professional Speech and Debate Association.
Okay. Pro SDA. That's our first episode was about Pro SDA. Tell me your experience with the Professional Speech and Debate Association.
I have an interesting experience with it. I joined during its first season, and this was
Okay.
about a year after I did the online IPDA. The reason I could do Pro SDA this time was it was only on the Saturday, and there was no Friday conflict. So I
Okay.
was able to just jump in and do it. I said, I have not competed in some of my favorite events like impromptu speaking in a while. This has 4 categories. There's a spontaneous debate event that's really more like speech than it is debate, spar. There's
Yeah.
impromptu speaking, there's prepared oratory, and there's prepared acting. 4 easy to understand events. I said, I'm going to do all 4 of them. My goal is to set a really good record at the end of the season. I don't need to win every single round and every single tournament, but I want overall to be the best at the end. That was the goal.
Okay. How'd you do?
I succeeded.
Nice. Excellent. Well, congratulations on those achievements. Let's talk a little bit about what opportunities other people have, therefore. So, PSDA, is that entirely online?
As of right now, it is. I don't
Okay.
know if there's plans to take it in person. If it was in person, I'd imagine it would be somewhere in California for these early tournaments because that's where
Right.
Blake Longfellow is located.
Yes, yes, yes. And so that was my other question. So if it's online, then there is a national draw, or at least you can compete on a national level. Anyone in the nation can compete in these things as well. What are those tournaments like? What are the entries so far?
Looking at the entries for this coming contest, I'm looking
Mhm.
at between 10 and 20 in each
Okay.
of these categories. I think
In
it's
each
a
category.
good, yeah, I
Okay.
think it's a good and fair number. And I
Yeah.
haven't looked to see how much overlap there is. For example, if you've got 5 people and they're all doing the 4 categories laid out, or if it's fully independent each way.
Mhm.
What I recommend for people if they want to join is do 2 categories as opposed to 1. Let's say
Okay.
that you've got a prepared oratory, throw
Yeah.
in the spontaneous debate event, practice just a couple times. I think it's good to throw a couple additional darts at the board because you never know if there's a single judge that doesn't vibe with you. And then you feel like, oh, that judge prevented me from breaking and I was only in 1 event. And I want to have more cracks at it. I want to have more bites of the apple.
Okay. So if you're getting, 10 to 12 per event, how many tournaments does PSDA host a year?
So they've jumped between it. When I did it, they did 1 a month. Now
1 a
that's
month?
not what they're doing. Then
Okay.
I know they went to a 1 a semester
Ah,
for the last couple seasons. And I'd have to go to the site to see it directly, but I think it's something like once every couple months they're putting on a
okay.
tournament.
And so are you planning on attending all of the tournaments this season?
I intend to coach. Right
Coach.
now, I'm doing my exec MBA at Northwestern,
Ah,
and there's a series of people who don't have a lot of public speaking experience, but they want to just improve their leadership skills or test out a pitch. And there's a lot of directly applicable use cases for coming up
okay.
to the PSDA and saying, "Look, I want to showcase with this oratory the value proposition for this idea that I have, and let's see what feedback I can get from the judges on this.
Okay.
And so there's a couple people who said, hey, and I want to do this. And right now I'm helping work with them to prepare them for the December tournament.
Okay. So you just mentioned that the professionals may be wanting to do this. I've been wondering the value of something like competitive speech and debate in a professional development type scenario. I mean, there's large companies that have large professional development budgets. What's your take on using something like competitive speech for professional development?
I think it's tremendous because with a lot of the existing public speaking professional development opportunities, they're self-contained. You might have an instructor who's charismatic, will come in, say, here's how you should use your hands. Here's how you should modulate your tone. Let's take a couple of videos of you. And then they're going to collect their evaluations and leave. And you're not going to have an immediate opportunity to test out those skills in a format that holds you to account if you didn't practice or didn't improve. I think that understanding the game of speech and debate, and at its core, it's a very fun game. And like all games, it can be educational and engaging, and a lot of emotions can run high, but it is a game. And understanding that game is useful for these professionals because you wouldn't just say, I'm better at Monopoly because I read over the rule book and talked about it a couple times. You have to actually play it. That's what I think these professionals should do. And if they feel like they're amazing communicators already, they don't really need it, prove it.
Right.
Go to one tournament for half a day, prove it.
Right. I talked to some of these individuals. They're like, my communication's perfectly fine and I don't need a coach. One of my common responses, like, even the best boxers in the world have coaches. And it's not because the coach is better than them at boxing. It's just because you need that perspective. You need somebody who's going to be honest with you and telling you, giving you feedback on things. And sometimes that is all you need to give you that sort of reflection back. Right. So, everybody can use a coach. I mean, hell, I teach this stuff and I would accept coaching if I were going to compete anywhere. So,
and I would say also on that point, it is all good if somebody says, I don't need a direct coach. I'm going to do this. I'm going to autodidact. Still test yourself.
Right.
You're getting micro coaching from every ballot you receive from a judge. That person has no bias towards or against you. They're just going to absorb whatever you're saying, and then you'll see how effective the message is. And so I think that assuming people have the couple hours to spare to go through a competition, I would strongly recommend it. And I think that if I had not done it before, and if I was not involved with coaching others for this, I probably would say, I want to take another crack at it and do it again.
Right.
Because hopefully I'll have changed my communication style in the last 3 years since I did it. And I want to hear from somebody who has no dog in the fight.
Right.
How am I doing?
Right. You mean, like, that feedback is incredibly valuable. Part of the motivation for even having these broadcasts is me wanting to stay sharp, because even right now I have to focus on reducing the number of verbal fillers that I'm expressing as I'm talking with you, and that in and of itself helps me to kind of stay sharp and stay on top of my game. Let's talk about other opportunities. So you mentioned Toastmasters. Have you ever participated in a Toastmasters meeting or competition?
Yeah, so I started doing Toastmasters in May. And the goal of doing Toastmasters was not so much that I wanted to immediately win the international contest for Toastmasters.
Right.
I saw it as a networking opportunity, and I saw it as a good way to do some market research. And that research is, if I'm offering advice in the context of a Toastmasters meeting, what resonates and helps adults improve, and what stuff is there so I sound good when I'm talking, but doesn't add any real value to their experience in the club. So I'm in a more novice layperson club, and then I'm in a more professional club where the main goal of it is to practice to give TED and TEDx speeches, and then we give each other feedback in preparation for that. I'm going to do the Toastmasters contest later this season. I've studied them. There's the evaluation contest and table topics, and they got a series of subcategories. But I'm curious to see how the speech, the debate, and the mock trial communication styles work in Toastmasters, where I think one of the most important things is shows of overt confidence. And I think that someone that's really confident and out there with characters in Toastmasters tends to do better than somebody who's more laid back and conversational.
Okay. Now, I've looked into a few Toastmasters organizations, and it seems like a lot of them are really regional, right? Like there'll be the Long Beach chapter. I live in Long Beach. Do you recommend going for one of those regional ones? Are there different types of Toastmasters clubs that aren't regional at all?
Yeah. So the more advanced Toastmasters club that I'm in, they meet on Saturdays. They call themselves the UN of TM because it's an international club.
Oh,
and
okay.
They bring in a bunch of people from various countries, various states, and give each other feedback. Meanwhile, the more entry-level club that I'm in, that is totally regional. It's just in the town where I live, Sun Prairie, Wisconsin.
Okay. Where's Sun Prairie?
It's sort of northeast of Madison.
Okay. And so, is that, you said you're going to Northwestern. Does that mean that you're going in person?
Yeah, it's the exec MBA program. So every other weekend I drive down.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Where do you think the overlap? Is there any overlap between Toastmasters and these other sort of forensics tournaments? Like, is there any discussion or any rumblings in Toastmasters about things outside of Toastmasters and vice versa?
Yeah, I found that the Toastmasters clubs are open to a lot of different categories. There's something built into Toastmasters meetings called the potluck speaker. You can put anything there. And so if you say, today in Toastmasters, we're going to do a spar. Today in Toastmasters, we're going to try to adapt the speeches that we've been making for the Toastmasters 5 to 7 minute international contest and see how this would look in front of a college speech judge, which probably means more research, more structure, a bit more emphasis on social impact.
Okay. So how do their tournaments work? Are they all online?
The Toastmasters contest?
Yes.
No, there's most are in person.
Most are in
not
person.
all, but yeah, most are in person. You go there, you've got evaluators. The evaluators have very strict rubrics where they go down a list and give you points. And then you advance to a series of different levels. And then the highest level you can get to, the international speech contest, is only there for the 5 to 7 minute speech, which is their version of an original oratory.
Okay.
And then they cap out sort of at the state level. Sometimes it's multiple states in one, but you can just call it the state level in the other categories. I think the most interesting one, because table topics is similar to impromptu, is the evaluation contest, where you are judged on how good you are at giving feedback to a demo speech.
Oh, that's interesting. So they actually give out awards to the judges or evaluators. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what's the criteria that they use to pick the best judge? How does that happen?
It works like a speech. So the evaluators all have a little bit of prep time after they see a speech. They come into the room exam style, one at a time, and they give their review. They have about 3 minutes to go through the presentation. In that time, they'll typically give a hook. They'll talk about strengths. They'll talk about suggestions. They'll give an ending. So how much value are you adding with your style and your substance? And is there a clear structure that you can follow?
Okay. And somebody just has a ballot. They're just filling it out.
Yep.
Okay. All right. What are the size of those tournaments? The Toastmaster tournaments, are they comparable?
It depends on the club level. You could have a bunch of people in a local club, or you could say, I want to go and win the club level and no one else competes with you. Okay. So really varies, but there are so many clubs that then feed in to the next level and the next level after that. You can just imagine it as the pyramid going up. Yeah. Unlike Pro SDA, which is self-contained, IPDA, it's self-contained each tournament. This is a progressive tournament. I think in more of a progressive way than you would see anywhere in speech, because most times in speech, you're competing at invitational levels, things in your local area, then you qualify to nationals, and that's really just the 2 levels up. But Toastmasters is tournament to tournament to tournament to tournament to the peak.
Oh, okay. And you get eliminated if you don't move on? Is that what happens? Okay. Very interesting. Do they have interpretive events? Like the college level, they have poetry and prose, and I always love those. They're so engaging. They make you cry all the time. Is there anything like that in Toastmasters?
There's nothing where you're going to act out somebody else's words in Toastmasters, but the style in Toastmasters is closer to humorous interp than any other category.
Okay. So would you recommend Toastmasters as a way to prepare for other competitions? Do you think that there's any drawbacks? Like, are they looking for something different, and then you sort of get trained in one way, and that's the distraction from the other way? I hope I'm explaining that right.
Yeah, that's clear. I think it depends on your local club. If
Okay.
your local club has a bunch of people who are generally academics, that means that the style of feedback will likely be similar to what you would get at the Pro SDA.
Okay.
If you've got a bunch of lay people in the club who have nothing to do with competitions or nothing to do with the academic world of communications, then you might be getting more feedback on the overall messaging and the vibe and things that took them out of the speech. I think both are valuable. I think that
Yeah.
it's the job of the speaker alongside the coach to synthesize all of this feedback and say what matters and what doesn't matter, separate the signal from the noise. But I'm always a fan of get more feedback, even
Right.
if it's feedback in front of somebody who's never seen a speech before. There's something you can get from this unvarnished view of communication.
Okay. What do you think your best event is? I mean, you started off with impromptu, you moved on to IPDA, doing some debate. What have you grown into over time?
Statistically, it's IPDA. I have the best win rate in IPDA. And I think
Okay.
that's because I approach IPDA in a lot of ways like an impromptu. I think that people tend to make IPDA formal and they tend to be very technical, even if it's not a very technical event. They also tend to stay behind podiums or sit down. I would move around the room in IPDA. I would make
Okay.
use of the space. I would try to act out scenes. So, for example, there was a resolution where I was affirming that the United States should take some privacy law that was passed in Great Britain. And when I was doing that, I said, I'm going to put you, the judge, in the role of somebody within a Senate committee.
Okay.
Now we're in the committee. We're all senators here, and we're arguing whether or not you should be the tiebreaker in this vote. And so for the rest of the round, I approach things as if it was that committee. And that's fairly entropy, but that's the sort of thing I think that stands out in IPDA, because straight up debate can be boring. I think we don't want to be dry.
Right. And really technical. Do you get those like former debaters that try to get technical and bullet point their way out of a debate and talk really fast?
Not so much in IPDA. I think
Okay.
that when someone goes through their first tournament in it, the judges are likely to punish them for it, either because they're lay people in the prelims who don't get it, or in the elimination rounds, you are being judged by people who did not advance in the other categories, and they'll be part of this league already. So
Okay.
it is rare they be part of the league and prefer to see a very fast and technical debate, because the league's ethos is not very fast and technical.
Right. Right. Okay. The oh man, what was I going to say? Yeah, so one of the adaptations that anybody who's thinking about this probably needs to do is be very conscious about, especially jargon, because debate is really jargon heavy at the college level, and so speed and jargon, as well as just like being too technically organized, sounds like something that you would have to work out of your system if you want to be competitive as a professional.
I think so. And that's true in a lot of levels of law as well. Winning the
Right.
vibe check, if you're a public defender, matters a lot more than making a whole lot of technical legal arguments. Save that for the objections. When
Yeah.
you're giving the closing, you want to connect with the jury. And I think that the best thing you can do is understand the jargon deeply and then be able to dumb the jargon down. So, for
Right.
example, I don't talk about, when I do IPDA, uniqueness links and internal links. Instead, I say 3 things we're going to talk about. Here's the problem, here's my plan, and here's the proof.
Right.
Those are my contentions.
Right. Is I didn't even talk about the topics. So IPDA, but IPDA has the 5 topics, and so you said that Toastmaster has some sort of debate-ish type of event with it.
Table topics is the closest to it. I think that's closest to impromptu, though, more
Okay.
than debate.
But it's not people competing against each other like directly. They're not like,
No, it's not a win-loss thing in Toastmasters.
right. There's no refutation that happens or anything
Right.
like that. So that's one major difference between, if you want that, because some people just absolutely love the refutation and sort of, coming over the top of their opponents and stuff like that. So IPDA would be the thing to do for that. I wonder if there's ever, if there's any sort of inclination of incorporating some sort of debate format into Toastmasters.
I think it's worth considering. You could even just do SPAR the way the ProSDA does it, with the 2-minute speeches, 2-minute cross-examination, 2-minute rebuttals, easy to get through. And that would not take more time than what they're doing in Toastmasters right now.
Okay. Well, these are a lot of awesome opportunities for people that if you missed your opportunity to compete in college, or you still have the urge to do that, or you just know that the skills that you develop by holding yourself accountable through competition is something that you want to do. A lot of opportunities for people. Dr. Iain Lampert, thank you so much for joining me and helping me out understanding all these nuances. And I'm sure we're going to talk in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And for everyone listening to this right now, if you haven't done it for a while, try out one tournament in any one of these formats, see what it's like. And if you've never tried it out, do it. Changed my life completely. I feel so much better on a day-to-day basis. Something I didn't mention before is in the second season of ProSDA, I didn't compete, but my wife did. And she does not have a high school speech background. She did great with creative writing. She did spontaneous speaking. And the skills that come out of that, because now she's in respiratory therapy, the skill of developing communication to make a better bedside manner and connect with people who she's trying to help. So much is fantastic about this world, and I hope you get into it.
All right. Well, thank you. So I look forward to joining you again on a future episode. All right. I'll see you later.
See ya.